Welcome to Veritas.
Greetings to everyone around the world, and a warm welcome to another edition of Veritas at veritasradio.com. I'm your host, Mel Fabregas, and I sincerely thank you for joining me once again. And if this is your first time or your truth journey brought you here, welcome home. And to enjoy tonight's full interview and every single interview we've done for the past few years, since the beginning, just go to veritasradio.com and subscribe. Don't wait. I know you want the truth. And if you want to upgrade your life, go to sanitasradio.com and listen to what we have to offer there. You will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. And if you want to contact me, you want to write with feedback, want to be a guest on this radio program, or offer a suggestion or have questions, I'd love to hear from you. Go to veritasradio.com and click on the contact link. Tonight we have a very special program for you with someone I have tried to have on for years. So I want to thank our friend Greg Caton for helping to arrange this interview. Tonight's special guest is none other than Dr. Patrick Flanagan, who invented the neurophone in 1958 at the mere age of 13. The neurophone, a neurological efficiency optimizer, is an electronic nervous system excitation device that transmits sound through the skin directly to the brain. In other words, it accelerates learning at an incredible speed. He received his U.S. patent in 1968. The invention earned him a profile in Life magazine, which called him a unique, mature, and inquisitive scientist. Flanagan, at age 11, developed and sold a guided missile detector to the U.S. military. Age 17, gained his heir. And instead of continuing to read his bio, which would take me a very long time, I have placed it on our website, but I'll let Dr. Flanagan tell us. He joins us directly from somewhere in South America. Hello, Dr. Flanagan, and thank you for joining me. How are you?
Hi there. It's a pleasure. Thank you. It's, well, what can I say? It's really amazing what we can do today on the internet.
With technology, I can actually put this out there, and in a few seconds, people around the world might see it. But you had a storm, or continue to have a storm where you are, so I apologize firsthand to the listeners if we have some trouble with the sound. We're trying to do the best we can. We may even get disconnected a few times, so please bear with us. At least this is pre-recorded, so we'll make post-edition changes so that it is as seamless as we can. And I really don't know where this interview will take us, folks, but my inquisitive mind, I hope we can go as far as we can. Why don't we start from the beginning? When I heard that you created the neurophone at the age of 13, but you also had some inventions prior to that. Tell us, well, hold on, before that, I think of Tesla. I was jokingly saying to you that I've had a few people telling me, when are you going to have Tesla 2? And I was wondering why they said that. But then I looked at October 11th, 1944. That's your birthday, right?
Yes.
Mine is October 18th, so we're both Libra. And then we have Tesla, who died on January 7th, 1943. Do you believe that maybe something happened with his soul and he reincarnated in you?
Well, I've come to the conclusion that none of us are separate entities, that we're all part of the universal mind, and that the more we think we're separate, the more problems we have in the world, because I think we're all one in a level of consciousness. But when I was a child, I was able to tune into the consciousness of Tesla. And let's say Universal Data Bank or whatever. And I told my mother, I said my real name is Nikola Tesla, and she said, "Who's that?" when I was a kid. But I don't know if I'm a reincarnation of Tesla. I just think that some of us, excuse me for a minute, just think that some of us can tune into the universal communication, universal library, you might say.
When you told your mother Nikola Tesla, the name Nikola Tesla, did you know who he was, or did you just utter the words?
No, I just uttered the words, and we went to the library and found the biography of Nikola Tesla, and but it's not surprising, because when my son was, this is a crazy, well, it's not a crazy story, it's a true story. But when my son was, I named my son John Patrick, family names, and when he was 3.5 years old, he said, Dad, he said, my name's not John Patrick. And I said, well, what's your name? And he said, my name is Wing Angel. And I said, really? And he said, yes. And he said, my wife, Smokey, lives in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and I'd like you to call her on the phone. And so my wife and I picked up the phone and dialed information and got information in Cocoa Beach, Florida. And I asked for a Smokey Angel, and I got a telephone number. And so we called her, and she said, my husband Wing died, like 5 years ago, and he told me he'd come back to me. And so my wife and I packed up, our bags, and we flew down to Cocoa Beach, Florida. And the strange thing is, I had a gold Rolex watch, when he was a baby. And when he was much younger, crawling around, he grabbed my watch, and he wouldn't let go of it, and he'd say mine. And I'd have to peel his fingers off of it. But anyway, when he told me about that his name was Wing Angel, and we called information and found a Smokey Angel, we flew down to Florida to meet Smokey, my wife and Wing and I, and so we arrived at in Cocoa Beach, Florida, rented a car, went out to Smokey's house, went up, knocked on the door. Wing ran in and hugged her, and then after we talked for a few minutes, Wing said, "Where's my stuff?" And so she went back in the back bedroom, and she came out with a cigar box, and she opened the cigar box, and the very top thing among all these stuff in the cigar box, the very top thing was a gold Rolex watch, identical to mine.
Oh, wow.
And so that was pretty wild. And anyway, so we visited her, and then he and she would talk about things they did together in his last life. They'd just talk about people they knew and things they did and all this stuff. And so...
What did she say?
Well, she believed totally in that this was possible. And Wing said he'd come back to me. And so
was Wayne involved with NASA, by the way, since this was in Cocoa Beach?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And so anyway, so we packed up Smokey, and she sold her house, and we packed her up, and we flew her back out to California. We lived in Altadena, California at the time, and Smokey moved into one of the spare bedrooms of the house, and had a big size bed, and Wing, the little 3.5-year-old, and her slept in that bed together, and then if we went to a party, we all went together, and Smokey was like his nanny, and Wing would walk around holding her hand, and when we'd meet people, Wing would say, "Hi, my name is Wing Angel, and this is my wife, Smokey."
No,
and everyone would laugh, and so Smokey lived with us, and all they did is talk about things that they did together. And so anyway, one day they were talking, and and we were riding in the car, and Hawaiian music came over the radio, Hawaiian. And so Wing said, that reminds me of England. So I go, okay, kid, I've had enough of this stuff, all about you talking about everything you did together and all that. But this time you're wrong. I said, that's music from Hawaii, not from England. And then Smokey said, well, we lived in this little town in England, and we stayed at this hotel called Ye Olde Philbridge Hotel, and they had a swimming pool where Wing would sit around and read or write, and they played Hawaiian music 24 hours a day around the swimming pool. And so this stuff went on, and then when Wing was 13 years old, he started getting, interested. I got a little girlfriend in school, and Smokey was so upset by the fact that he got a little girlfriend.
He's cheating on her.
Yeah, it created a real big upset, and so we had to pack Smokey up, and we sent her off to live with her sister, and that was the last of it. And my son is now 44 years old, and he's married to a Chinese girl, and she's a Christian. And Wing called me up a few months ago, and he said, I don't know what to tell my wife because she doesn't believe in reincarnation and doesn't think it's in the Bible. And of course, we know that the Bible's been edited and things have been, dropped out. And when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found some things in there that, talks about reincarnation. And, but he says he started talking to me, and I was in a movie called The Outer Space Connection, and this was in the 70s, and it was Alan Landsberg was the director and producer of this movie, and I was in half the movie, and it was I had written a book called Pyramid Power, published in 1973, and it went on to become a bestseller, and I self-published because no publisher would take it, and they said, "Nah, I don't think anyone would care for your book." So I borrowed $5,000, and I published 5,000 copies of Pyramid Power. I paid for it, and it was under the name of DeVores and Company, a small publishing company in Santa Monica, and so I was able to get 5,000 copies for $5,000, and so I started distributing the books, giving them to bookstores, and I did some radio shows and things, and it took off like wildfire. And I ended up selling 1.5 million copies of Pyramid Power at $10 a copy, and before that I had done a lot of consulting for companies, and I consulted for the government, for the Naval Ordnance Test Station, U.S. Navy, Naval Intelligence, the CIA, different things, and during the Vietnam War, we had a Dolphin Communications project in Hawaii.
Before you go there, if you don't mind, I apologize for interrupting you, but I'm fascinated by the fact that you were in this movie, The Outer Space Connection. Alan Landsberg, I mean, he's known to a lot of science fiction people. He did other ones, but he always had, if I remember correctly, Rod Serling as the narrator. Am I correct?
Yeah, Rod Serling was the narrator of our movie, yeah.
Right, exactly. And it was basically a documentary that explored the controversial theory that extraterrestrials explored the Earth in the distant past. So before Ancient Aliens came to History Channel, there were people like Landsberg and Rod Serling discussing this topic in the 70s, weren't they? Yeah, absolutely. And so anyway, so the movie was a big success. It was one of the first, let's say, documentary dramas that went into theatrical distribution in regular movie theaters throughout the world. And for about 10 years, I couldn't go anywhere in the world. And everywhere I went, no matter where it was, in Japan or anywhere, people would recognize me and ask me for my autograph. And so one day, after we had completed The Outer Space Connection,
I told Alan this story about my son Wing. And he said, "Oh my God, Patrick, this would be a multi-billion-dollar success, or multi-million, I think he said." And he said, "We've got to do a movie on your son, and we can interview him, and we can interview his wife Smokey, and his previous wife, and all this stuff." And he got so excited. And I said, at that time Wing was 9 years old, and I said, "Alan," I said, "it's not my decision." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, you have to ask Wing." And he said, "He's only 9 years old." And I said, "You still have to ask Wing." Because, he was talking like an adult. It's his story. And so we had a meeting, and I brought little 9-year-old Wing in, and Smokey, and my wife, and we were in there, and Alan Landsberg gives him this pitch. He says, "Oh man, you'll be worth $100 million, and you'll be famous." And he went on and on and on about selling Wing about it. And Wing looked him in the eye, and it brings tears to my eyes, because he said that, Alan Landsberg, he said, "No," he said, "it's my story, and I won't do it." And Alan Landsberg got so mad at me. He was so pissed that he never spoke to me again. And he even published a book about the movie, and he took me right out of the book. I was in the movie. Half of the movie was about me. But when he published the book on it, after the movie came out, he didn't mention me. And because he was so mad that I wouldn't, force my son to do the story. And today I don't know if I was right, but it was Wing's life. And so I had to honor that.
Did Wayne have any regrets later in life about your decision?
I don't know. Wing is, is a real genius, and he can write and produce, and he's even produced a small film that is amazing recently, and he's, I guess, submitted it to some of the film festivals and things like that, and it's brilliantly done. And I bought him a $15,000 Mac computer to edit this film that he wrote, and it's quite dark, but it's a very interesting film. And recently, anyway, like I say, he called me and he started talking about his past life. And he had written some songs when he was Wing Angel, and he used to play them on the guitar. And I said, "Wing," this is a very recent phone call. I said, "Wing, do you remember this song?" And I started singing the first verse, and he did 5 verses, and I didn't even know the other 5 verses. I only knew a couple of them. And so he remembers even now, and he's 44 years old, and he's revisiting it. I don't know what happened, with Smokey and all that when we shipped her off, and he never talked about it at all for the rest of his life until recently, when he called me and started saying, "Dad, do you remember when Smokey came to live with us and this and that?" And I said, "Of course." And then I started to tell him a little bit about it, and then he just finished everything I said. So he did not lose the memory of it, is what I'm really trying to say. He's fully cognizant of it even now.
Yeah, because usually people, I remember having a similar situation when I was young. My family immigrated from Cuba, and I had a great aunt walking with me on the street, and in the Caribbean, in another island, and I was looking at this very large house, and I said, "That house looks a lot like your house in Cuba." And she started crying, and I said, "Why are you crying?"
Wow.
And she said, "Because that looks just like my house there." So ever since, I wonder, and I also grew up a Catholic, a Roman Catholic, and I always wonder why they decry anybody who talks about the possibility of reincarnation. And what your son is saying, you would think that it would leave him after he's, because usually you become ridiculed at a young age, and then you, as a defense mechanism, you forget. But obviously your son has not forgotten.
No, he hasn't. And here, I have to blow my nose just a second.
Sure.
Okay, I'm back. So,
and by the way, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable.
Oh, no, it's okay, because I'm not uncomfortable. It's just the memory of it and what we went through and how powerful it was to our own consciousness and mine. Like when I told my mother I was Nikola Tesla, and but the thing is, I was a child prodigy in electronics, and when I was 8 years old, I had a general class ham radio operator's license. I built all of my own equipment, designed it myself, vacuum tube transmitter and receiver circuits, and antennas, and all of those things. I even built a ham radio Tesla coil when I was 11 years old.
Well, what training did you have? By the way, may I call you Patrick?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. How because at 8 years old, you're probably, second grade perhaps. What training did you get in order for you to do all of this?
I had no training. It was all memory, past life memory. It was all memory. I channeled everything. And of course, my father was a geologist for Shell Oil Company, and we traveled a lot because he was looking for oil fields in North Dakota and Montana, and I was born in Oklahoma, but we moved to Montana, North Dakota early in my life, and but my father is not technically, or was not technically minded at all, and years later, when I was 17, 18 years old, my father begged me to please teach him Morse code and about ham radio and how to design antennas. And my father went ahead and got a ham radio license when I was about 17. But I had all this from my own memory. And when I was about the same time, 8 years old, I had a series of recurring nightmares. And in the nightmares, I was flying an airplane, single-engine airplane over the Pacific Ocean. And I don't know, I just knew it was the Pacific Ocean. Anyway, I was flying this airplane, and the engine started stuttering on me and cutting out. And I saw an island in the distance with just a few palm trees and a big, wide, stretching beach. And so I tried to put out a radio call for help, and I landed the airplane on the sand. And night was approaching, and I didn't have a flashlight. And I opened the cowling very clearly in the dream of the airplane, and I looked at the engine and decided I would have to wait till the next morning. And so in the dream, I was sitting on the beach, and as the waves were coming in, it was warm, and I saw a light in the distance coming toward me, and I thought, that's a search, airplane looking for me. And so it got closer and closer and closer, and then the light turned into a flying saucer in the dream, and it landed on the beach, and it had tripod legs, and an invisible door opened on the saucer, and some people got on, and they were carrying what looks like today a laptop computer, and they had a helmet that looked like a football helmet, and it had little silver, looked like electrodes all over the inside of the helmet, and they put the helmet on my head, and they opened up this laptop computer, and they had a table there with legs that folded down, and I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "We're measuring your knowledge and intelligence." And I said, "Why?" And they said, if you don't have enough knowledge or your intelligence is not high enough, we're going to destroy everyone on Earth. And then the dream ended, and I'd wake up screaming and crying. I was only 8 years old, and this recurring dream occurred every night. And the only thing that made the dream go away is when I read as much as I could read, when I absorbed as much knowledge as I could absorb. And so I started reading prolifically, and by the time I was 14, 15 years old, I was clocked in school reading 14,500 words a minute with 95% comprehension.
Wow.
So, and I literally read thousands of books, not hundreds, in my life, but that got me really going. And then let's see. So when I'm 12 years old, we had moved from Billings, Montana, to Houston, Texas, where Shell Laboratories were located. My father was assigned to teaching geologists who had graduated from college how to recognize rock formations and plants and things that would indicate oil underground. And so we had just arrived, and I'd been in school at this it was called Jane Long Junior High School, so we'd been there 3 months, and they said science fair is coming up in 2 months, and or whatever it was, and anyone that wants to enter the science fair should put together a science fair project. And it was for all grades from, I guess, junior high school all the way through college. And so I got this idea for, because there were a lot of atomic bomb tests going off at that time, and a lot of ICBM missile tests and stuff like that. So I decided to build an atomic bomb ICBM detector. And I had this whole idea. So I built my invention, my device, and I was able to record exactly when and where atomic bombs were tested anywhere on Earth, and also what time it was and what date it was, and when they launched ICBMs for missile tests. And so,
how was the data coming? For example, Trinity on April, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you. What it was is that by the time I was 12 years old, I had studied with my memory as Tesla or whatever I was able to get from Tesla's mind or whatever. Anyway, I had built some very powerful high voltage electronics equipment, and I had been studying plasmas, electronic plasmas or ionized gases, and I noticed that when I used different combinations of gas and things, that when I created an arc in a plasma that would interfere with my ham radio receiver and would interfere with television and everything else. And so what I figured out is that when an atomic bomb explodes, it generates a super ionized plasma containing not only the material the bomb was made of, but also a super ionized atmosphere.
Positive ions.
Yeah, and what happened is that this column of gas goes straight up in the air, and it acts, because it's highly conductive, it acts like a vertical radio antenna. And so what I did is I built a receiver that would detect those ionized gases, the frequency range of those ionized gases, with a radio direction finder. And I use that and also the same. So when a missile goes off, the missile forms an ionized gas trail that's like a vertical antenna. And because the frequencies are extremely low, we're talking about in the audio range, that those radio frequencies will circle the Earth, and every time they circle the Earth, they lose less than 3 decibels of energy, which is a small amount of energy, and so I was able to radio direction find, and by listening with headphones, because I had this thing on all the time, and so when a test went off, I'd hear it, and I would locate it, and there was a big difference between an atomic bomb explosion and a missile being fired, a huge difference. And so I entered the science fair, made up a thing, and I won the whole science fair over college kids and everything else.
How old were you?
12 years old.
12.
And so then what happened is that the Houston Post and the Houston Chronicle reporters came out, and they they put my win of the science fair on the wire services, right? And the next day I was on the front pages of newspapers all around the world and things like that. And so I'm sitting in study hall. This was on the weekend, so on Monday I'm sitting in study hall, and the principal comes on the school loudspeaker, and he says, "Patrick Flanagan, come to my office immediately. The Pentagon is on the telephone." And so I went to the principal's office, and there was a 4-star general from the Pentagon on the phone, and he said, "How did you know when each and every one of our tests went off the date and time?" And I told him, I said, "Built this thing." And so the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base sent down a group of 15 scientists and other people, security people, to my home, and they packed up my missile detector and everything, and they took it off with them, and they made my father sign a non-disclosure agreement that if I told anyone outside of an authorized government personnel how this thing worked and the details about it, and if I did so, that the government would take me away, or my father did so, the government would take me away, and my family would never see me again. So what happened is that when I was 17, by the way, I consulted with the government on the device by mail. But when I was 17 years old, I got a call from this thing. It's called the Gold Plate Award. And it was out of Washington, D.C., and they called up my mother, and I had just been in Life magazine. When I was 17, Life magazine did an article on me and my invention of this neurophone device.
Didn't Teller get one too for the atomic bomb?
Yeah, Teller did. Yeah, so what happened is that they said, "We want to give you a gold plate." And it's very prestigious. And it was on, December 29th, 1962, at the Del Webb's Ocean House in San Diego, California. And so we drove out to Texas in my car, because by consulting I'd made enough money to buy my own car, a brand new Pontiac, and so we drove out to California, and I received this award, and also receiving the same award as me was Edward Teller for inventing the hydrogen bomb, Murray Gell-Mann for discovering the structure of viruses, and Wendell Stanley, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics. And also sitting with me was Admiral Red Rayburn, who got the same Gold Plate Award for inventing the Polaris submarine. And also there was, there were a couple other people there. Secretary of State. The Secretary of State, who had been a former run Bell and Howell. And so we were all getting the same award together. And there was a great big Navy honor guard and all the press and all this stuff. And so it turns out that Admiral Red Rayburn was director in charge of the CIA at that time. And so he said he wanted to have a meeting with me and Pete Peterson, who was the Secretary of State. So they had a private meeting with me and my family, and they said, Admiral Rayburn said, "Son, we want you to go to college and get as much knowledge as you can, and it doesn't matter where in the world you want to go to college. Even if you want to go to college in Russia, we'll get you in." And he said, and we want you to learn as much as you can, and when you're finished, we want you to sign a contract that you will work for us for 5 years, and then we'll let you go do what you want to do. And then I was very excited because he was head of the CIA, and I love James Bond movies, And but when all my scientist friends, I said, I'll let you know tomorrow. And I called a bunch of my scientist friends, and they said, no, they'll never let you go. Don't do it. Don't do it. So I told, by then as a consultant, when I was 17, I was making more money than my father. And he had seniority at Shell Oil Company. And so at any rate, what happened is that I told Red Rayburn, I said, I won't do it. No, because I don't. They also offered me this is 1962. They offered me $165,000 a year allowance in addition to paying all my expenses, which is a lot of money even today. And so I said I won't do it. And he said, well, son, would you work for me on a favor basis? And I said, what's that? And he said, if anybody ever gives you a problem in government or otherwise, you call me, call the CIA and ask for me, and I'll call you back within 24 hours. Leave a message. So one of my patents was put under secrecy. It was one of my neurophone patents, and the government did the same thing they did with it as they did with the missile detector. They said,
by the way, $162,000 in, what does he say, 1962?
Yeah.
That's almost $1.3 million today.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it? Yeah. So Red Rayburn said if I ever have any problems, to leave that message. And so what happened is that one of my neurophone patents was put under secrecy, the same way the missile detector was. And so one night I got tired of it, and I called the CIA, and I said, I want to leave a message for Red Rayburn. And the guy said, never heard of him. And I said, he was the third director in charge of the CIA since it was established. And he said, still never heard of him. And I said, well, he told me that I could leave a message for him here and that he'd call me back within 24 hours. By that time, Red Rayburn had gone over and was a director in charge of the NSA. And so the guy said, you can leave a message for anyone you want, but I won't guarantee you they'll ever call you back. So I left a message for Red Rayburn, and less than 24 hours later, he called me back, and he said, what's your problem? And I told him I want to get my patent out of secrecy. He said, done. He said, it'll be released within 2 weeks. And he said, but I've done you a favor. And he said, now you're going to owe me a favor. And he said, no matter what I ask you, you have to agree that you will do whatever I ask you to do, which is pretty crazy. But I said, okay, I'll go along with it. And so 2 weeks later, my patent was released from secrecy. And then Red Rayburn asked me to do a favor for him, and I can't tell you what it was, but it wasn't anything illegal, I can tell you. But I worked with Red Rayburn for years that way, and he became a very good friend of mine. And I was very disappointed when he died because I was thinking...
Not too long after, 1966, that's when he died, right?
Yeah. So, at any rate, he was a really good friend, and his sister called me after he died, and his sister became a friend of mine for years and years and years. But that's my life, but when I published Pyramid Power, I was able to stop doing government work. I was able to stop doing all of that stuff because I made money off the book. And anyway, one night I got a call from the CIA, and a guy said, I just have to tell you something. When you published Pyramid Power, it was the best thing you ever did. And I said, why? And he said, they think you've got off the deep end and they've loosened the chains on you. Loosen the controls.
Well, they thought you were crazy?
No, but, the Pyramid Power is about, building pyramids and sleeping in them and it being like a resonant chamber and that when you put food in the pyramid, it becomes...
It doesn't rot.
Yeah, it doesn't rot, and things like that. And it's very esoteric. I mean, it's very New Age. In fact, my son told me that Pyramid Powers started the New Age, but I don't know. But at any rate, apparently it was good because they were really watching me very closely. Yeah, I have a lot of stories about that, but I'm not so sure I want to tell all of them.
Well, I understand that because you work for these alphabet agencies for so many years that there are certain things that you cannot discuss. But are there any things that you have not discussed in the past that perhaps have been declassified or you're able to speak about them?
Well, the thing is that when I was 18 years old, 18 and a half, my mother, for some reason, decided she wanted to have me drafted to Vietnam. And I guess because I was so different. And
she wanted you to be drafted?
Yeah, she called up the draft board to send me to Vietnam to make a man out of me.
Okay.
Said. And I think she thought I was gay because I was a world-class gymnast, and I'd go to the gym and I'd work out with weights, and I became one of the top gymnasts in the world, at least in the United States. And she was serious. She wanted to send me to Vietnam to make a man out of me. And my mother was very, very fearful about gays. And I wasn't gay, but she had her suspicions or whatever. So she, and so I'm in college, and there was a girl in psychology class, and her name was Leela, and we were kind of flirting with each other in class, and so I invited her out on a date, and so we go out on a Saturday night, and we start talking about how restrictive our parents are. She's 17 years old, and I'm 18. And we decided the only way we could get away from our parents was to get married. And so I went home, and she went home to her family, and we announced that we wanted to get married the following weekend, 1 week later, after just one date. And my mother was just thrilled. And so she said, "Oh, God, that's so wonderful." So our parents had to sign the marriage certificate because we were underage. But the following Saturday, 1 week later from our first date, we got married at Methodist Church in Bel Air, Texas. And it changed my draft classification so that I wasn't going to be drafted. My mother actually called the draft board, but it changed it. And I went to work for NASA right away after we were married on the Gemini space shots. And I became one of the engineers that worked on that space shot out at Clear Lake, Texas. And so we were together for 11 years, and it was amazing. I mean, we didn't even know each other, and but we had two beautiful children. I had my son Wing, and he still goes by Wing, not John Patrick. And
oh wow! So he's using the name, his past life name. By the way, how did Wayne, the original Wayne in Florida in Cocoa Beach, how did he?
W-I-N-G, Wing.
Oh, Wing, W-I-N-G. I'm sorry, Wing. How did he die?
In his past life?
Yes.
He tells me that someone killed him on purpose. And Smokey suspected he died of a heart attack, and he wasn't that old. And Smokey said that he had upset a lot of people. And my son, he's a rebel just like I am, and super intelligent. And I mean this lifetime, but he wasn't finished. And so he and Smokey both believed in reincarnation. So they had discussed, if he died, he told her, if something happened to him or he died suddenly, that he'd come back to her.
How old was Wing when he died,
I think he was 58 years old, something like that.
Okay.
Fairly young.
And your son still remembers do you think your son remembers and perhaps continues the mission the wing had?
Well, I don't know. When he was reborn and we got hold of Smokey was in her early 60s, and I think he is continuing the mission that he had before. Yeah, you'd have to. I don't know if he'd be willing to talk about this, but at any rate,
if he ever does, I would love to speak with him. But the neurophone, how did that happen?
Okay, well, a strange thing.
Thank you for listening to the first segment of this very important Veritas interview. If you enjoyed it and wish to listen to the rest, go to veritasradio.com, click on members or subscribe, or tell someone else who will enjoy this and all our radio programs. If you are listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share it. Don't forget to visit the Veritas store, where you can purchase pure organic sulfur, earthing and grounding products, supplements, a USB drive with all our shows, gift certificates, rebounders, and much more. Now, we'll take a short intermission, listen to some music, and I'll see you in the Veritas member section. Enjoy.